IRS just issued new frequently asked questions. I want to focus on one question, the supply chain issue. That seems to be one of the bigger ones out there. So here's our frequently asked questions. They were updated July 27th of 2023. What I want to look at is question 5. Was my business or organization fully or partially suspended if I had a supply chain issue? This one was added July 28th, 2023, in the last 30 days. The answer, a supply chain issue by itself does not qualify for ERC. The IRS provided a narrow, limited exception. So let's underline limited exception. If an employer was not fully or partially suspended, but their supplier was. So notice this, the supplier was fully or partially suspended. However, it applies only when the employer absolutely, I'm going to triple that, absolutely could not operate without the supplier's products and the supplier was fully or partially suspended themselves. It's kind of like you're stepping in the shoes. So if you're an employer and you're going to say it's a supply chain issue, then you're going to have to, in effect, step in the shoes of that one supplier, because it keeps talking about a supplier, not suppliers. You can't aggregate these together. Let's go on. In addition to having a supplier government order, you will need to show that. So one is the supplier was fully or partially suspended themselves. Then 2, the government order caused the supplier to suspend the operations. So they had to be fully or partially shut down, but then you have to show government order caused the supplier to be suspended, and the third point, you couldn't obtain the supplier goods or materials elsewhere, regardless of cost. And the fourth point is it caused a full or partial suspension of your business operations. With that right there, the supply chain issue has to be related to a mandated government shutdown of the supplier, and that supplier, then you're going to have to be able to show that the supplier operation was suspended. That means step in their shoes. You got to have their documents. When did their mandate start or stop? Because remember, these wages are only qualified for the period that the mandate had started till it ended. So if you don't, just because one of these ERC mills just say, well, did you have supply chain? Doesn't work. These are very specific requirements. If you get audited, you have to be able to show, again, step in the shoes of the supplier, and you got to have the same documentation for the mandate that as if it was you, and then you couldn't get the supplies elsewhere, regardless of price, and it caused an impact on you of fully or partially suspended of your business operations. So I think that's real important. And with that, the final warning in this answer, you should be wary of anyone who says you qualify for ERC based on supply chain issues without asking you specific information. Let's take this question 5 and apply it to my ERC door 2. So see what it's saying. I could have supply chain issues. That's business. You get back orders, whatever. So what this is saying, that with this limited exception, you've got to show that the supply chain, that's clear down here in step 4. You've got to show that it was partially or fully suspended, and you got to be able to have documentation for it. You couldn't get the stuff elsewhere, and it caused you to have a full or partially shutdown. It's only then that you get to say yes to this, to go over and say, why my business? Well, why I was partially or fully shut down. At that time, you get the ERC. But the point of this question, you just can't say, well, it was a supply chain issue. That happens in business all the time. You've got to come down here. It's got to be when the supply chain is the supplier, that single supplier was under a government mandate. So The flow chart works with a frequently asked question. Just be cautious. It's almost impossible to qualify for a supply chain under ERC mandate. Thank you. See you in another video.